Hi folks, my name is Thibaut Van Dam, and I am a DIY singer-songwriter and also guitar tutor based in Southeast London. Today I'm very excited to be back on my channel and making a video today about my audio-visual setup. Specifically, I wanted to make a video where I'm talking about a camera that I almost bought called the Panasonic GH5, and for me this was going to be an upgrade. The Panasonic GH5 is a professional mirrorless camera, and it came out around the same time as the camera I currently use, which is the Canon SL2, and I thought I was going to give it a go to try to upgrade, and in the process I kind of had a shocking discovery, which was that this camera, which is an entry-level DSLR from Canon, somehow outperformed the GH5 in many different ways, and I thought that this was shocking. Now, some of the things that informed this kind of discovery for me were based off of facts, and some of them were also based off of my user experience and things that I have a preference for in terms of use case. But I thought that this was pretty exciting, so I wanted to share this on my channel and share it with the people that subscribe. So thank you for everyone that does subscribe. If you like this video, please consider liking the video, and please consider subscribing if this is what you are interested in. It motivates me to keep making content like that and like this, and also it's why I'm here right now. I also just want to take a moment to talk about two things in this little section about subscriptions and whatever, which is, the first is the importance of audiovisual quality in general. Now, I'm coming up on about 10 years of having a YouTube channel where I've been making videos, and I started out on the camera that was on my computer, and I was using that microphone too, and it looked pretty bad, believe me. And I don't even know if any of those videos are still public because I found them so embarrassing. And another thing I just want to add to that is that making videos at that time in that quality, I liked the content. I made those videos because I knew the content was good. I was writing good music. I'm still writing good music. I want to share that with people. That's my job as a musician. And I found that actually the quality was so bad though that I couldn't ask people to like or subscribe or anything like that, and it was so difficult. And it wasn't until I switched to my DSLR that I finally felt confident enough in the quality where I said, you know what, this is a video that I would even be willing to watch given the quality. And I think that whatever it is I'm saying, or the videos I make about music theory, the videos that I make about, music royalties, that this is valuable and the content is good and the quality is good enough now that I can ask people to subscribe and not feel weird about it. So I think that it is important, and it is a bit of a journey. And the other thing I want to stress in this section is the fact that I am a DIY musician. I am a singer-songwriter and guitar tutor, right? So these are the videos and the types of videos I'm making. I usually have my camera in the same spot. It's stationary. And another thing is that I'm making the videos with me at the forefront. I am not a videographer, all to say. And when I did some research about the GH5 to help me with my decision-making process, I found a lot of videos from videographers, people that know a lot about the details, that are willing to spend 20-30 minutes getting the settings just right to get the perfect kind of exposure and exactly what they want. And for me, that's not my bag. I am a content creator, and I make content on the basis that I'm a musician and I need to share. My job is to make things and share what I do with people, basically, and I need a means of doing that. And I decided that the standard I needed a high quality camera that produces a decent bokeh, a natural bokeh, and I also wanted to have high quality audio, which is in the form of this Audio-Technica ATM31A going into my Audience ID44. And actually, because I'm already there, I'll just explain my audio setup, which is I'm using the headphone output on the Audience, using a 1/4-inch auxiliary jack to go into the Canon microphone input. This is a tip that I learned from Podcastage, Bandrew from Podcastage. It's a weird tip because it's a headphone out, but it works perfectly, and it is a good solution, and it's seamless, right? I'm getting audio directly onto the video, and I have less editing involved. And so for me, editing is kind of the enemy of me as a character. When I'm in front of the camera, I need to just be natural, be myself, and this video is for people who are doing something like that. And so I'm hoping that what I have to say in this video will sort of inform you about kind of why I think this camera outperforms the GH5 in different ways. So as I said before, I do feel more confident asking people to subscribe. So thank you to everyone that does subscribe. I do have over 300 subscribers, and that for me is a huge deal. I remember I struggled to even get 100 for a long time, but now I ask people and I feel a lot better about it because of my AV setup. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start off with basically what the beginnings of this were. Where did I get the idea to upgrade? Why did I want to upgrade? Things like that. Well, it started off when I was making a video and I ran into the 30-minute time limit. And so anyone that has a DSLR knows about this 30-minute time limit, which seems completely like redundant at this point. Basically, you can't record for longer than 30 minutes, and I wanted to find out why. So I said, enough is enough. Maybe it's a setting I can change. And even though the SL2, the 200D, the camera I'm using, has a very intuitive menu, I just never found that setting. So I went online, on YouTube, I found a video. And in that video, they explained that the 30-minute time limit is a tax thing. Basically, if you could record for longer than 30 minutes, the camera would be considered cinema grade, and therefore it would be taxed differently. And the cost would be so expensive to the consumer that the manufacturer decides not to put it in most of the time. But they made a point of mentioning that the GH5 was one camera in particular that actually did not have that 30-minute time limit. And thus was planted the seed. So I was like, okay, whatever. And I said, there's nothing I can do about it. But then I also thought the important thing for me is that what I'm saying is of substance and value, and that I'm not going too much. So that was kind of the goal I was thinking about. And I said, fine, I will do my best to just keep it under 30 minutes if I have to. And I don't personally like editing. It is sort of my enemy. It's one thing I'm working on, but basically I just like to do my videos, be myself, and that's kind of it. So then, would you believe it, the day after seeing that video, I found myself in a secondhand store in my borough of Lewisham, in the borough of London, called Lewisham, in my borough, and I found a GH5, and it was a good deal too. It was £670, which is about $850, and it came with a lens, it came with a preamp, the dual preamp, the DMW XLR1, which connects via hot shoe, and also an NTG1 from Rode, which is a high quality microphone made in Australia. So I saw that and I was like, this is a good deal actually. So even if I hate all this, I could sell all the parts separately and maybe even make money. And I thought that was a good idea. So I said, screw it, I'm gonna go for it. If I don't try it, I'll never know if it's better. So let me give it a go. And I gave it a go and I was not impressed. And it became very obvious really quick what was wrong. And I was faced with a dilemma, which is the dilemma that kind of I was navigating throughout this entire process of experimenting with the camera, which is choosing between higher quality and better performance. And I never thought I'd have to decide between these two things. The camera industry is very honest in this way, where you get what you pay for. You pay more money, you usually get more. And I like that. For instance, the tax thing is an example of that. And so you pay more and you get more, you get a full frame thing, you're spending more money. But it actually makes sense when I thought about it. Basically, if you want to have more features and higher quality and you want to get into the nitty gritty of all the specific specs and everything else, if you really want to get into it, necessarily you have to go through the settings and go through the maze of the menu and etc. That makes sense. Now, the deal breaker for me was I found that there were certain presets on the camera that were basically not accessible in a way that didn't need to be. And also there are certain features that just underperform the SL2, and that's sort of what I'm going to talk about now. So the first thing I noticed about the accessibility was the touchscreen. This like drove me nuts, and I spent like a couple days just trying to work it out. And to be honest, there could even be a solution for it, but I looked through the menu, I watched videos on YouTube, I looked through also the manual, and I couldn't work it out. Basically, the touchscreen on the GH5, you cannot access any of the features that you see on the screen just by touching. The closest I got to being able to do that was by clicking a button on the back of the camera called the quick menu button. I'd click the quick menu button, I'd fumble around back here because there's a bunch of function buttons as well. And if I clicked it, then I could access those features. And okay, so that is just more than I would like to do. It's more friction. It makes it harder for me to actually adjust my exposure like I'm doing right now. And so there it is. The SL2 allows me to adjust settings on the fly with a touchscreen, which I think is very seamless and I really enjoy. And speaking of the actual screens, they're both fully articulating, which is essential for someone like me where I'm making a video and I am the subject and the camera is going to be my videographer. And on this monitor, I can see on this camera, I can see the essential information that I know I need, and there's nothing else I would want. and I wouldn't want any less either. I can see how much battery life I have, how long I've been recording. I can see if I'm in manual focus mode, manual video mode, or if I'm in an automatic mode of some kind. I can see my autofocus, and I can see the fundamentals of exposure. And the fundamentals of exposure, I think, are essential to getting a good quality video, basically. I think anyone that does videos or does photography needs to know the fundamentals of exposure pretty well. It's just a basic rudimentary thing. And so I can see all the parameters of my exposure. I can see my shutter speed, my ISO, and my aperture. And not only that, I can adjust them easily. So adjusting them all easily is very important for me because I don't want to have to click a button to click another button. That's insane. So that leads me to kind of this other thing, which is the touch responsiveness of the articulating screen. You know, the GH5, just to add, it had a lot of settings. You can sort of alternate between the different menu and the visuals on the monitor, like getting rid of certain parameters and stuff, but I just never found it ever looked organized and easy to look at. This looks very easy to look at and very easy to navigate. Maybe it's because I'm used to it too, but it is also very intuitive, to be honest. Now, the touchscreen is also very responsive, which is very important for things like autofocus. The autofocus and tap to focus features on the SL2 are drastically superior to that of the GH5, which this one really did bother me a lot, because if you're going to spend almost 4 times as much for a camera, a professional mirrorless camera, you expect the software that goes into making the autofocus work, you expect it to be at least as good as an entry-level counterpart from another company, at least. And not only was it not as good, it was inferior by a mile. And so it occurred to me that the SL2 had incredible autofocus, the dual pixel autofocus from Canon, and that I had taken it for granted. I had just taken for granted how good this autofocus system is. I often use tap to focus to show things when I make videos about music theory, or when I'm, trying to show people whatever, and it works super well. Not only that, but the autofocus tracks me really easily. If I gesticulate with my hands or whatever, it doesn't actually go to my hand and say, whoa, did you want to show your hand or something? It just knows that this is my face, and I want my face mostly in focus unless I want to show someone just like anything in particular. And tapping to focus works like a dream, and I couldn't ask for anything more. And yeah, it was so good. The word is sprezzatura. It was so good it appears effortless, which is just amazing. And yeah, the GH5, the autofocus is absolutely terrible. But to its credit, the manual focus has a cool kind of virtual assistive tool, which I think is really, really interesting. It's one of the pros I'll talk about later, but basically, if I have to resort to the manual focus, I cannot use that camera for this purpose. It's literally not fit for purpose because I need the camera to be my videographer. I need to trust it's already focused on me. Okay, so then another thing I want to talk about is the sensor. So the sensor, basically, the best way I can explain it is, so this camera has an APS-C sensor, which is 1.6 times bigger than the Micro Four Thirds sensor, which is, the Micro Four Thirds sensor on the GH5. Okay, so the analogy I like to give, so there's lots of opinions about sensors and like maybe the Micro Four Thirds can do better somehow, but I basically like to use this sail analogy. If you have a boat and you have a sail, if you want more wind in your sails, yes, you can angle your small sail in a specific way so that you get a little bit more wind, but basically if you want more wind in your sails, you need a bigger sail. If these are the options, bigger sail or like maneuver the sail, you basically need to know how to do both. Because if you can't make use of the bigger sail, it's no use to you, right? But if you want more wind, bigger sail gets you more wind. It's like pretty facile stuff. And in this sense, I think having a larger sensor, an APS-C size sensor that is bigger than the Micro Four Thirds by a factor of 1.6, I think that you get more light in your sensor and all the benefits that come with that. Now, there is some debate about what those benefits actually are, but I basically think it includes these 3 things at minimum. The bokeh. You get a more natural, easy to achieve bokeh. This is the kit lens, and the bokeh looks, I think, perfectly acceptable. You can still sort of make out objects, but it's there in a way that is not distracting. It's kind of, don't focus on that, focus on me. It works perfect, The other advantage, I think, of having a larger sensor is the dynamic range. Now, this may not exactly be true, but it makes sense to me that I noticed that things in the background that are dark look dark but still detailed, and that things that are in the foreground that are in focus and well exposed, that they are well exposed, and you can see the details of my face and etc. And then finally, low light performance. Now, realistically, neither of these cameras perform all that great in low light, and low light really is more of a factor of the lens you use. But I would basically say that if you have a larger sensor to get more light into your sensor, it stands to reason that it will perform better in low light in general. Another thing is that basically this camera has more megapixels. It's 24 point something, 24.6 maybe, whereas the GH5 is 20. Now, again, why would I be paying more to downgrade? It doesn't make sense. I couldn't justify it. So then there are some other things to point out. These are more like factoids that just didn't sit with me that made the SL2 better than the GH5, starting with actually the crop factor. So the crop factor has to do with the sensor size, and both the APS-C sensor and the micro four thirds sensor, they're both going to have a crop factor. It's just that with the micro four thirds, you're going to have more of a crop factor, or a greater crop factor to consider. And that's just annoying. It's just more annoying. You know, the APS-C crop factor is annoying. That one's more annoying. Okay, so why would I want that? The other thing about the lenses is that the Canon family of lenses, you have more of a selection. There are just more lenses available. And I prefer the interoperability of the lenses between the EF to the EFS mount. So that basically I have some EF mount lenses that I can use on this camera. And if I ever do upgrade to a full frame Canon camera, I can use those EF lenses on that camera, and I don't have to sell all the lenses I have. Now, this is true of the Panasonic family of lenses, but they just have fewer lenses, and they have even fewer kind of full frames that are kind of interoperable in that way. So it's another consideration. Also, because Canon has a more distinguished family of lenses, there are also more third-party lenses available for it too. So another consideration. Something else that was obvious to me is the battery life. So there is a fundamental difference between the SL2 and the GH5, which is basically that this is a DSLR. It has a mirror in it, and it has sort of its viewfinder, and it uses that mirror for that. And the mirrorless camera, the GH5 is mirrorless. So the battery life is about 50% worse on the GH5. And I like good battery life because I'll do a session where I'll do a video and it will go on and on. So yes, I need more battery life, and also the batteries are actually just smaller. This is smaller than the GH5 battery. It's very light, it's easy to carry around, which leads me to my next point, which is that actually the SL2 is about 50% lighter than the GH5. The SL2 weighs 1 pound, the GH5 weighs about 1.5 pounds. So some people prefer to have a more substantial camera. It's worth pointing out that the SL2 is made almost entirely out of plastic, whereas the GH5 has a metal-like body. And that's a matter of preference, but the way I see it is if you have a lighter camera, it's easier to carry around all day, and ultimately we want the best performance out of the lightest thing we can get. Now, in terms of the metal versus the plastic, the weird thing is I found that all around on the Canon camera, where there is plastic, which is everywhere, the camera is of a higher quality than the plastic on the GH5. And the plastic on the GH5, where there is plastic, specifically, I noticed it with the articulating screen. The articulating screen on the SL2 just feels better, more substantial, and more durable than the GH5. So even though the GH5 has this solid body that feels really confident in my hands, I like that a lot. Actually, the articulating screen feels inferior to the SL2, and that was unfortunate and surprising for me. I want to take a moment now just to talk about some GH5 pros, because there are pros, and some of them are undeniable and have to be rationalized in some way. So the GH5 pros are basically that it does not have that 30-minute time recording limit. You know, you can record longer than that. It's a small thing, but it's important because if you need to record something like a lecture at university and you need an hour of recording, and you are trying to study and take notes and stuff, you don't really want to go up to the camera halfway through and like stop it and start it again just because you can only do 30 minutes at a time. That's like really annoying. Again, this whole thing is kind of stupid because if you can use your phone to record for longer than an hour, I can't really imagine why that rule still applies, but that is the situation we're in. Another important factor about the GH5 that makes it better than the SL2 is the 5-point stabilization. So if you are behind the camera on the GH5, you have this 5-point stabilization so that if you're moving around, it makes a very stable video, which I think is just obviously better than the SL2. Again, it's a use case thing. I make videos about music theory. I share my songs. I'm usually sitting down, not moving. The camera's not moving. I don't really benefit from that. But if you are out and about, 5-point stabilization would be beneficial for sure. There's something I really liked about the GH5, which is the assisted manual focus, which I kind of mentioned earlier. But the assisted manual focus is this really cool thing where when you are manually focusing, whatever is in focus will be highlighted by like kind of an electric blue outline. And I really liked that. I thought it was super cool. It was a really cool, I don't know, combination of an old school technology, because manual focus is basically the most, fundamental method of focusing on a thing, right? Like that's how all cameras, like film cameras, work on manual focus. So it is cool to think that why not use technology to improve an old school system, because manual focus is also the smoothest. So a lot of people use manual focus for videos, but that doesn't mean you have to like look with your eyes and focus in. And like, to be honest, you should have that skill. Like to be able to manually focus is something that anyone that's making a video should have already in their kind of repertoire, their skill set. But it doesn't hurt to have an assistive tool like that. That was really neat. And I kind of wish the SL2 had that. And then the elephant in the room, which just cannot be overcome in any other way, and it's really a matter of preference, is the superior video quality. There's no doubt at all. I'm not questioning it. The GH5 produces a better quality video at 4K, 60 frames per second, 10-bit. Like that is a better, superior quality of video. And how did I rationalize this? And it was difficult to, because ultimately better quality is better quality. Just like bigger sensor is bigger sensor. If you can capture better quality, if you have the ability to do it on the camera, it's just going to be better. It's that simple. And how do I rationalize that? Well, I look at myself. I take a hard look at myself and I say, how is the detail? Is the detail good? Do I think I look detailed enough? I think I look detailed enough. And this camera shoots in 1080 full HD. I wouldn't accept a quality lower than that. I think that this is a quality that I think is the standard. It's not the golden standard, but it is the standard of YouTube videos. And this is sort of how I rationalized it. That standard recording is at 1080 on YouTube. And 4K, in a sense, is gratuitous for my use case, both for myself as a producer of the video, but also for the consumer. I watch videos on YouTube on my phone, on my computer, and I never reach for 4K. It takes too long to buffer, and so I don't actually benefit from 4K as a consumer of videos. Now, as a producer of videos, it's also gratuitous because it takes up more storage on my memory card, and also when I'm actually working with the video, when I need to export it, when I need to upload it to YouTube, it takes up more data that way too, on my Wi-Fi or whatever. So the thing is, it's more trouble than it's worth for someone like me and my expected audience. My expected audience, I don't imagine people are going to IMAX to watch my YouTube videos. I don't think it works like that. If I knew that was happening, I would probably spring for a little bit more quality, And so I think that that's what settled the kind of quality debate in my mind. Maybe in the future, as things improve, as people start reaching more for 4K, as 4K becomes more manageable, as data storage on memory cards becomes more affordable, maybe it makes more sense to reach for 4K. And actually the fundamental of it is that if you can capture higher quality, I would almost always say go for it, because you can always go down in quality, but you can't go up in quality where you can't. So if you can capture a higher quality, you usually go for that. I just think that the 4K is more... I would be going for that and only that. I wouldn't have all of the frictionless setup and all of the tap to focus and all the good things I like about the SL2. And the fact that this camera costs so much less than actually the GH5, and that the GH5 underperforms in so many other ways, makes it very hard for me to justify it as an upgrade. And so that's kind of my main takeaway. And I think that the important thing is considering the use case of the GH5. If I was a videographer, if I was making commercials for Oreo or whatever, I would probably want to be able to capture the absolute best quality available at an affordable budget. I would say the GH5 can do that, even though it has the micro four thirds sensor, even though all the things I mentioned throughout this video, I would still say I want that higher quality because the client is going to notice that and they want that. That's the specification they gave me. I don't think I could get videography gigs with 1080p full HD. I don't think I could, even though I have been paid as a photographer and stuff. It's a different thing. I don't think I could work in that way. But again, that's my perspective. I am a musician. I am a guitar tutor. I use my channel to share these things with people. My forte isn't to say, look at the quality and doesn't this just look so amazing and detailed. So I think it's important to remember your use case and to consider that as you go through the process of deciding what's best for you. At this point, the way I see it is that the SL2 satisfies everything I could possibly want from a DSLR. It allows me to get high quality audio onto the video directly, so I don't have to link them up and sync them in post. That saves me a bunch of time and headspace. And ultimately, recording under 30 minutes is acceptable to me. It means that if I can't say it in under 30 minutes, then I don't understand the topic well enough. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know all the amazing things I missed out about the GH5 and why it's still obviously a better camera. I think it all has to do with your use case, and I hope that this video has been helpful for the people whose use case is similar to my own, because I think there's a lot of content creators out there that are looking for a camera that can really get them good quality audio and video, but they don't want to fiddle around. They don't want to become a videographer so they can share the work they do as an artist or someone making tapestries or whatever, you know. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you did like this video, remember to like the video, remember to subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to stay in the loop, and of course it motivates me to keep making content. And thanks so much. I'll see you at the next one.